All right, so this is a great place to start another painting when we're looking at, now we're moving from the end of the Civil War and now we're moving to the United States, and by the United States we're talking about the North and the South coming back together. So just real quickly, if we're looking here.
Appomattox Courthouse.
Absolutely.
When I was a 8th grader learning about Appomattox Courthouse, I actually thought it was a courthouse. It's actually the name of the town. The name of the town where the official ceremony takes place is Appomattox Courthouse. And what's really ironic about this, the man who owned the house where Robert E. Lee is going to surrender to Ulysses S. Grant also owned the farm where the first major battle of the Civil War took place, the Battle of Bull Run. So the man who owned the property where the war, like the first major battle, although it starts at Fort Sumter, the first major battle of the war, he also is going to own the property where the war will officially come to an end.
Have you been to this place yet?
No.
Oh, okay. All right, road trip.
Yes.
Road trip, okay. All right, so here we have the war ending, you know, the surrender of Robert E. Lee to Grant, and of course this is ending. You know, you can see Union soldiers, and I shouldn't even say soldiers, probably mostly officers in here dominating the room. Yep. So now we're getting into Reconstruction, the title of this unit, the rebuilding of the South after the Civil War, important vocabulary. When we're looking at this whole Reconstruction, again, the goal now is to bring everybody back together when we're talking about rebuilding. A great part of this unit, and one of the many challenges we're going to talk about in this unit, is what to do with these freedmen. Throughout an entire curriculum in 7th grade, when you were talking about, you know, African Americans or Africans coming to the New World in 1619, and they're slaves from 1619 to the end of the Civil War, you've always known them as slaves. Now it's going to be freedmen or African Americans. When it comes to Reconstruction, I think probably dawned on me after a while, when I wound up asking students what you're rebuilding, I think it made a little bit more sense when it comes to what you're rebuilding, because I mean, it's easy for us to, you know, go to, okay, you need to rebuild this, obviously, but when you're looking at all the things that took place, I mean, what do we need to rebuild here other than structure?
Trust.
Trust
between,
big in a relationship
between the North and South. Like,
yeah,
that's absolutely needs to be rebuilt. And we look at, you know, the challenges that you're going to face here aren't just the rebuilding of infrastructure, the buildings, the bridges, the roads. It's now that trust that has to get. We have to rebuild their governments.
Right.
Are we going to officially free slaves? Because although the Emancipation Proclamation declared that they were free, you know, slavery is still in the Constitution, the 3/5 Compromise. You know, so we're going to have to amend the Constitution to officially get rid of slavery.
When you're even thinking about rebuilding as well, I mean, the North and the South, for all intents and purposes, just like you folks, you're friends. I mean, I'm sure you're in 8th grade, you're 13 or 14 years old, you've probably had a good friend that you've had a major blowout with, a friend, right? And then all of a sudden you want to come back and be friends again. That's really difficult because now it's like if Kogan and I here got into this big blowout, of course we're going to become friends again because that's just natural. But then, you know, moving forward, it's like, dude, you said some pretty evil things about me. You know, you said something about like the Yankees, my sports teams, my mom, because that's what middle school boys do. They rank on each other's mom. You know, there's certain things that you're going to have to like overcome in order for you to like shake hands and go, you know, all is done. So in terms of infrastructure and government and structure itself, there's a lot you're gonna have to rebuild. I think it took me a while to kind of go, hey, ask the question like this,
and then this. Yeah. I mean, we now have, what was the official number at the start of the Civil War?
When we're talking about slavery,
how many slaves there were?
You're talking about like somewhere in the neighborhood of like 3 million.
Yeah, there was like 3.5 to 4 million,
and that's depending on the source, of course.
To 4 million slaves who are now going to be freed as a result of the Civil War.
And the question remains, what do you do with them?
Right.
What do you do?
You know, where are they going to go? Where are they going to live? What jobs are they going to do?
Huge transition.
Yeah, these are people who for their entire life it had been illegal for them to receive an education. So what are they?
Property one day to a member of a society another day.
What are they going to be qualified to do? How is the government going to help them in this transition from being somebody's property to being a member of society. It is more than rebuilding the South. How we are going to address the freedmen is one of the biggest challenges that this country is going to face. Because of course we have the North, you know, who fought to abolish slavery, is going to want to come in. We're going to want to educate them. We're going to want to give them the right to vote. We're going to want them holding federal office positions. We're going to want this. We're going to want that. But if we look at it from the perspective of a white Southern plantation owner who used to horribly mistreat their slaves, you're going to be like, whoa, hold on. I don't want this person having any power and the right to vote or the right to become educated or certainly the right to own a weapon. That's not something that these Southern plantation owners, especially those that were brutal towards their slaves, are going to want. And this give and take that's going to take place is what's going to be the major challenge.
Did we beat this to death?
Yeah.
I mean, I love the fact that I stole it right from you in PowerPoint. I mean, it's just one word, but I mean, as you can see, a lot of depth to it.
And we kind of get into, you know, now one of the greatest what ifs in American history.
Yeah.
Because it's no surprise, you guys know what eventually was going to happen to Abraham Lincoln upon his assassination. But one of the greatest what ifs in American history is, what if Lincoln wasn't assassinated? How would the future history of our country been different? Because I almost guarantee you, the world we live in today, with Black Lives Matter, with the Civil Rights Movement, my personal opinion is that if Abraham Lincoln wasn't assassinated, you wouldn't know the name Martin Luther King Jr. because there wouldn't have been a need.
I guarantee you, he lays awake at night thinking about this stuff.
That, like,
you and I are counting sheep. He's thinking about this.
Yes, it is.
It is one of those things. Yes.
Had Lincoln not been assassinated, we don't end up with segregation.
Yeah,
the Ku Klux Klan never comes about.
Yeah.
We don't end. And somebody like Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King Jr. just would have lived their lives as, you know, members of society.
So now, before we look at the next one, all right, let's look here. You know, the war is ending. You know, clearly in any war or competition or game, you have winners and you have losers. Now, throughout American history or world history, you know, if you are the winner, right, how are you now going to treat the loser? Is that a good way of looking at this moving forward?
Yeah.
I mean, how are you then going to treat the loser? Now, of course, what middle school students say is that, well, if you're the loser and you're down, it's like, let's kick them and beat them. And then, you know, after 30 seconds of that, they come to the realization and go, you know what, there needs to be, you need to demonstrate some humility, some sportsmanship, if you will.
Some respect. I can't tell you how many times I've seen, like, you know, been on the losing side of the games, and like I see the kids on the other team taking pictures of the scoreboard, because they're like, what are you gonna post it to your Instagram so your 7 followers can be like, oh wow, they beat Robert Frost.
So it is it is like a real delicate situation. It's like, okay, you won, now what do you do to the losers? Because if you're a loser, whether it be in life or in a war, you know, eventually you're not always going to be the loser. You're going to be in a situation where you're going to be able to dictate the terms or maybe move something forward. So it's always important to treat the loser in a dignified way, I guess, which brings us to this, because Lincoln wants us to come back together, okay? So while some of you went, okay, well, you know, based on what Mr. Kogan said and everything else, you know, the South lost, racism, slavery, all that other stuff, let's beat them while they're down. You know, do they deserve it? Probably, if you're looking at certain things. However, is that going to get us back together? No. So that's a longer conversation.
Lincoln's primary objective of the Civil War, preserve the Union.
Get them back together.
Get this country healed and back together as quickly as possible.
So although we could spend a long time on this, we can just, I'm sure people will make the connections quickly right away. So
taking an oath of allegiance, you know, allegiance, loyalty. We say the Pledge of Allegiance every morning at school.
He's raising his hand. If you're taking an oath, anybody who takes an oath, you know, whether you be a government official or you're sworn to be a witness on a court stand, you have to take an oath. You're making a promise. People always, you know, middle school students always go, oh, well, if you're just making a promise or you're saying something, you could always not do what you promised that you were going to do. Sure, but your word is your bond here. Now, the big thing here is that we're looking here, everybody, this gentleman is obviously taking some sort of oath, but at this point in time, what could he be possibly taking an oath to do then?
My guess would be he's taking an oath of allegiance to the United States of America.
Sure.
He was probably somebody who fought for the Confederacy.
Yeah.
And was like, hey, I'm sorry, I swear my loyalty to the United States.
And while that may seem simple, it's pretty big when you're giving your word. So when we look at what Lincoln's going to do here, we can put this up here and we can break it down. Lincoln, of course, wants it make it easier. All right. So the amount of people that had to take an oath to come back to the United States of a southern state's population is just 10%. Very, very small number in the grand scheme of things.
And once that 10%, this is kind of where my students get a little confused.
Okay.
Once 10% of those voters swore their oath of allegiance to the United States, now that particular state, let's say it's Virginia, now that state can begin to write its own new state constitution. Because let's not forget, those states, they seceded from the Union. They broke away, they formed their own country. And now it's like, nope, sorry, you now need to write a brand new constitution. Oh, and that brand new constitution must abolish slavery. You must get rid of it. It has to be your Virginia, great, 10% swore their allegiance to the United States. Now write a constitution for your state. Believe it or not, New York State actually has a state constitution for our state government that puts the governor as the chief executive of our state. Must abolish slavery.
And it's addressing a big part of what one of the causes was. You know, you want to be able to participate in government once again. You want your state to be able to participate in government again. You want your state to have representatives in Congress. You want your state to have representatives in the Senate as well, because they are in fact your voice. So that's very, very important. Once you get 10% of that population, you abolish slavery. Now you're giving amnesty, which, going to another document that we probably covered, pardon, you are now forgiven.
And that's huge.
Huge.
Because let's not forget what every single member of the Confederacy was guilty of.
Treason.
Treason.
Yeah.
They were rebelling against the United States of America. The same way George Washington and Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Jefferson and Alexander Hamilton, had we lost the American Revolution, could have been hanged for treason. I remember at the signing of the Declaration of Independence, Benjamin Franklin said, "We must all hang together, or rest assuredly we will all hang separately." You know, because they were committing treason. So Washington, I'm going way before that. Lincoln is basically going to say, I will offer amnesty. I will offer a government pardon to anyone who swears loyalty to the United States of America. However, that will not apply to the former leaders of the Confederacy. Now that's a very...
We'll delve deeper into that.
That's very, like, well, what's a leader? Just the president, and he actually signifies, that's what I'm looking for, he actually...
Specifies. Usually, you know, you have military leaders, generals, colonels, and whatnot. Government officials are going to be your leadership position. We'll get to that in a second.
He actually specifies.
But just something that you're saying, because I know you taught 7th grade for a while, you know, and you're bringing up treason, you know, and they go amnesty, that's not a big deal. Treason's a crime.
Punishable by death.
Punishable by death. I mean, Aaron Burr was brought up on charges of treason.
Yes.
They didn't have enough evidence to support him, but this is, and this is why I'm glad we get to chill and do this, this is a pretty big deal. You know, if you're going, hey, you know, you're forgiven of that crime, you're forgiven of being tried, possibly punished. This is any punishment right now.
John Brown was hanged for treason because he attacked the federal arsenal building a couple of years ago. Remember the American Taliban?
John Walker Lind. I don't even know where he is. Every once in a while, he was actually spared.
He
was spared. Okay.
They decided not to execute him because they deemed that he was not like fully sane. Like
oh, that one.
Yeah,
I'm not.
So he's spending he's in Colorado.
Okay.
At Supermax.
Let's play around with this, and then we'll come up with a separate one for this. But if we're looking at amnesty, you know, everybody's going to forgive, and there is an accept part to this, as Mr. Kogan was bringing up before. Accept the leaders. Your leaders are going to be your former president of the South, which you're only talking about one person. your former military leaders. When you're looking at leadership, when you're looking at any organization for that matter, okay, you're going to have more followers than leaders. Is that a good way of putting it? And the military, where you're going to have, who are you going to have more of? The guys and girls of lower rank than leaders. So when you're talking about leaders, you're talking about like this much, okay? When you're looking at military leaders, you're talking about like this much. Whereas the people who follow orders, you're talking about a lot.
It's a pyramid.
Probably same thing with a corporation as well. You have your CEO and your board, and you're talking about this much in terms of your workers. Where
like so that social pyramid, somebody's at top,
right?
And
exactly.
The average person is down here at the bottom.
Even
now
better.
again, if you're you know, Joe Schmo,
right?
Confederate soldier,
Private Jones, who's 19 years old,
you know, and you're like, wait a minute, this sounds pretty darn good to me.
Yeah,
I'm forgiven. I fought for the Confederacy.
Yeah.
I fought to preserve slavery, but now President Lincoln is going to offer me forgiveness, and all I have to do is swear my allegiance and my loyalty to the United States. Done.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, the word I love to use about Lincoln's 10% plan, it's very, very lenient. It is a very lenient plan for Reconstruction.
Yeah.
Question is why? What does Lincoln want?
You know, in school terms, it's like, you know, you committed a serious violation.
You started a food fight. You
started a food fight, and you're walking away with maybe detention.
Yeah, and you get detention. Pretty much what it is.
It's
you know, but Lincoln's plan was meant to heal. Was meant to get our country back together, working together. That trust that we talked about was meant to start to solidify trust once again between the North and the South. The North basically saying, "Hey, look, you guys did really terrible things to other people. You started a war that killed 600,000 Americans, but we're willing to forget that in the sake of having our country heal."
So now, even though I think we beat this to death, I think one question does come up that we should probably address here, is, you know, why would it not apply to leaders then? Because that, if you haven't figured that out right now, we'll kind of play off of that.
This is actually where I show the video clip.
Oh, okay.
From the movie Lincoln.
Okay.
Where Daniel Day-Lewis's Lincoln is sitting with General Grant.
Yeah.
And he basically is saying, like, when the war ends, it mustn't all be hangings. If Jeff Davis,
right,
you know, happens to leave the country while we aren't looking, that wouldn't be the worst thing. You know, because Lincoln is kind of like, look, yeah, he's a terrible person, but like we're not. Even though he's not going to offer them pardon, he was kind of like, let's just, if they get away, they get away. Just let our country heal. And that healing is where as I said before, if Lincoln was able to initiate this, then there wouldn't have been hostile feelings between the South and the North, which we're going to end up having because of a group of people called the Radical Republicans. Then the future history of the United States would have been totally
different. And the goal is to come back here. Come back here. And, you know, with this, coming back here, certainly achievable, certainly lenient, as Mr. Kogan brought up.
But as we know, unfortunately, Lincoln will attend Ford's Theater, and John Wilkes Booth will creep into the box behind him and shoot the president in the back of the head, altering the course of the United States forever. See you guys soon.
This is a spoiler alert.